Yo, what's up? I go by the name of Q Terry. I am now joined by the homie Alex. What's up, Alex?
What's up, Q? Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, man. It's been an early one for me up for a while here, and I'm still just getting a chance to wake up. This is my first live stream, really, since I think COVID started to really shut everything down and put everything on pause.
Yeah, man, I feel very fortunate to be on, and I'm happy to talk about this subject that's obviously top of mind for a lot of people, and especially with COVID and everything too. This is an important topic, and I think one that a lot of people are going to be thinking about and talking about for a while.
Well, what's up to everybody? I see everybody jumping in from the chats. Shout out to y'all. Make throw y'all comments up. Let us know where you're coming from. As always, you know the routine. Today we have one of the most incredible shows I think in a long time because we're going to be talking about something that's near and dear to a lot of people's, I would say, identity. Alex, you can jump off of this. We're talking about the future of college, right? That's something that a lot of people have opinions about.
Exactly, man. Exactly. It's, I couldn't think of a more timely, subject right now, right? College is something that we've all been told, is the path, to a better life. It is the path forward. And suddenly it's been disrupted. And the question is, now what, right? What does the future of college look like? And, no one really knows the exact truth of it, but there's definitely some early trends that we're seeing that show that it's going to change the fundamental landscape.
For sure, for sure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into our conversation. If you don't mind, hop into the comments. We are seeing everybody out there. Shout out to everybody popping in on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. It's crazy how many places you can stream to all at once. I'm going to jump into our convo, and I will catch you in the future, Alex. And hard about the future of college education. You just recently penned an article for us detailing some of the trends you're seeing on Trends Exchange. You're a very strategic thinker. I'm curious, what's your take on the future of college and what brings us here today? Like, what brought us here?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about a topic that I don't think in a million years I would have expected to be this high on people's radars. Like, we knew college was changing over the past couple of years for sure, but I think with the impact of COVID, we're about to see a rapid acceleration in the way in which colleges work. So, to be clear, when I first started working on this idea of modern college, it was because I felt like the advice that we gave college students hadn't caught up with the dynamics of college today. Like, people didn't talk about college with the $1.6 trillion student debt crisis in the picture. They didn't talk about how 50% of millennial grads are moving back in with their parents. They didn't talk about the shifting work culture. And my goal was to try to catch up the advice. And at the time when I first sat down to write it, I felt like I was trying to be a fortune teller and trying to get ahead of things. And the irony with COVID is I now feel like I'm almost like back on track with the trends now. So, it's crazy how quickly things are changing, but it's an important conversation to be having for sure.
Now, in the book, I want to talk about something that Ryan, he has his internal thesis on college, and I'll let him talk about that. But in the book, you talk about how alternative paths will become more common, and you call out this chart. You track the growth in bachelor degrees from 1870 to 2009, and there's a pretty significant year over year increase. You have, I'm sure, some interesting reasons as to why, but the core thesis behind the trend that you're seeing is you're speculating that we're actually going to see for the first time ever a decrease in bachelor degrees that are awarded to the U.S. population. Please elaborate on that case, and then Ryan, I'd love for you to jump in. And this is definitely something I know you've got some opinions on.
Yeah. So, I think it's really interesting when I sat down to write this book and was thinking about talking about college and how it is now. I had this kind of like moment where I was like, how did we get here? Right. Like, how
Yeah.
did college become this like staple and this thing that like we all grow up being told it's the path you have to take? If you want to find success, go to college, get that degree, and then you'll land your dream job. And for some people, it does work out. Right. And I tried to pitch that the book, but there also are many people that don't. And so I basically went back in, the time machine all the way back to 1636 when Harvard was first founded and looked at what happened over time. And what it showed me was that there were actually, large chunks of our history where college like wasn't a thing. Early on, we sort of only just had like college for like vocational training, and then we had a couple of trends, namely the introduction of the American GI Bill, which essentially allowed people and veterans coming back from World War II to essentially go to college for free, right? So that was kind of how it first really started to pick up, because you had all these people coming back from the war. They could go and get trained. They could be on these campuses. And the more people that went to campus, the more attention there was on, okay, how do we make an experience here? Like, let's build social orgs, let's build athletic programs, right? Let's actually get people in. And for a while, this was actually a really good thing. Like, it was kind of a, meritocracy. A lot of people could get in, they could get trained at, an effective and fair price. And the states were essentially sponsoring a lot of it. And then there was this fundamental shift where the government started to pull a lot of that funding from schools, and schools started to act like a business, right? And that's where we kind of get to where we are today, and that it's not a public good anymore, education. It's this private institution that's trying to maximize, right, its returns. And as a result, we're kind of in this situation where we think college is the only way, but I believe that if it was at one time not a required path, that we can get back to that again, especially with the technology we have now. I don't know, Ryan, if you have any thoughts or if that,
Yeah,
correlates with your thinking at all, but I would love to hear, another opinion on that as well.
definitely. I think when I think about college, I think one of the most overlooked aspects of it is, if we're talking about where is college going to go in, 5-10 years, are we a step away from it? Are we going to see a reduction in the number of undergraduate degrees like you predicted? I think what we lose when we lose college on a long scale is maturity. Like that 4 years that somebody leaves from being at high school at 18 to what they experience by the time they're 22. I mean, that's a big gap. That 4 years or 5 years for some, you grow up a lot in that time period. And I think it prepares you just as a person to like be in the workforce as a whole. So when I think about where I was at 18, yeah, I might have been able to somewhat fit in, but I definitely was not mature enough to fit in the workforce. I definitely didn't have the confidence to be able to, do something like this where I'm just talking about ideas with other professionals, let alone, doing that 8 hours a day. So I think like when we think about, okay, what's next for the college paradigm and whatnot, I definitely agree that there should be more alternative methods of educating people, just because there's so many ways to learn online as it is. I'm all for the alternative ways, but I think that 4 or 5 year period where we're saying, hey, go out, find yourself, you're going to pay a lot of money to do it, and people are going to make a lot of money off of you because of that, but I think that 4 or 5 year period where we tell people, go off, learn, make new friends, I think that's a time where you're just you're prolonging the gap between youth and adulthood, and I think that's a very important part that we would miss if we start going away from the college experience.
Alex, I want to piggyback off of what Ryan just mentioned. There's a lot of growth that happens between 18 and 24. When you're in college, what was true for me was the network that I built. I don't know if I would have been able to build that outside of college. And if I were able to, it would have taken a little bit longer than what I was able to manifest in the 3 or 4 years of college. curious your take on how modern universities, as they start to change and virtual settings become the norm. We've already talked about this in depth, myself and Ryan and a few others on Trends Exchange, where networking has fundamentally changed. The way that businesses network, the way that friends even network. I mean, virtual birthday parties are a thing now, right? What does networking look like in the college environment?
Yeah,
On the modern,
totally agree.
on the modern side, like as this future goes, as the future comes.
Yeah,
how are kids going to play beer pong virtually?
Exactly. These are the key questions we got to answer. And, just to clarify, like, I couldn't agree more with the sentiment of, this 4 years being so important for development, and like so much of the degree, right? Like, we talk about the signaling and the brand recognition and the skills, but really it's the life experiences, right? That we got there. I made, some of the best friends in my life, people that would be standing at my wedding in college, right? I had my first, serious relationship in college. I learned how to play beer in college. Things like this, I agree, they're critical life skills. And, to be clear, I really hope that we can make that experience available to more students. I think the problem right now is that, number one, COVID is essentially a physical blocker from us doing that. That's not even like a, philosophical shift at this point. It's like we physically right now can't do this on a lot of campuses. In terms of how we actually, start to adjust to this, right? Like, I think in the future, we need to have some sort of like in between setting, right? Where you can actually have people that maybe pay for a more involved experience and do live on campus, while also making it accessible to people who might not have the funds to, actually pay for the tuition and board, but can maybe come to campus, right? Like once or twice a semester, or can come to these common settings and start to get a little bit of that. So, the optimistic side of me is like, maybe we can find some middle ground that both provides access to people that normally would be, shut out of the college experience from cost, while also giving some of that, opportunity to interact. And then, Q, to your point, in terms of how does the networking play off of that, I think it all comes down to digital presence, right? And I know you guys are both very familiar with this, but it's something that you just really have to keep emphasizing with, young professionals and college students, is that as we go more and more remote as a workforce, how people find you is the internet. And the first thing that comes up when I type your name into Google or LinkedIn, right? That's essentially your brand. That's essentially what I'm going to have a split second to judge you on. And the more you invest in that digital real estate, and the more that you have a presence there, the more you have an opportunity to be a part of our economy and to actually have new opportunities.
That makes tons of sense. I want to talk to one of your earlier points where you talked about, colleges creating a middle ground for people that may have not been able to afford it. In your research, Modern College just dropped 3 days ago. And congrats on that, by the way. It's not easy to drop a book. It's not easy to drop a book in times of such uncertainty and craziness. So your ability to stay focused and just kind of just pursue your dream, I commend it. Ryan, I'm sure anything to add there?
Yeah, me and Q have attempted and failed at writing books many a times. We're about 33% of the way there.
Yeah.
So congrats.
Yeah, the book thing is not easy, and anyone that knocks that, they're tripping. They're tripping heavy.
Yep.
Now, jumping back on point, in Modern College, you talk about the capital allocations. They're changing. We might be in a depression. Some people are calling it. Recession is officially what's hit the books thus far. As that starts to elongate, obviously how colleges get money is going to change. Might hit more ads for their MIT Sloan program. So they're telling me, hey, come get this executive master's online. And like, it's different, right? You can go to MIT for like $4 or $5 grand. Like it's actually quite compelling. So you can get that little MIT check mark for a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that I'm sure are like saying like, I'll thug it out for $3 grand. But on the flip side, right? If MIT costs $3 grand, and Full Sail cost whatever it cost. I'm sure it's more than $3,000. And you have the University of Phoenix is online, and then you have all the traditional like Big Ten colleges and universities and the proverbial Ivy Leagues and all these name brand universities that are all now going for these dollars that are arguably like probably not there, because who's going to pay for room and board when there's no students in classrooms, right? Who's going to go and pay for even the game day experiences? What happens to all that money?
Yeah.
And you, having been on the precipice of just modern college in general and what the contemporary players are doing, I'm curious how you're going to see, or what trends you've seen thus far for the 2021 so 2020-2021 school year, because school's going back in like 2 months and we're seeing all-time highs. And on the COVID side, obviously things are not going to look the same. So from your perspective, Alex, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So, I think the first thing to recognize, right, is when we talk about why a lot of these colleges are pushing so hard to open, it's because I think they realize it's do or die for a lot of them. I think a lot of people don't recognize actually how thin or even potentially negative some of the balance sheets are for a lot of universities out there, particularly a lot of these mid-tier universities where it doesn't have the brand recognition of, say, an Ivy League school. It doesn't get the support that, say, a large state school would get. And they're kind of on this middle ground. And for a lot of them, if they close their doors in fall, it'll mean closing their doors for good. And to be clear, I think a lot of them are going to do that. We've already seen, universities starting to cancel programs and cut departments. I think I saw like the University of Arizona. It was either Arizona or Arizona State that just cut 38 from 8 departments. And so I honestly think we kind of had a supply surplus on the college side, and I think we're about to see a lot of universities close for good. What the impact of that will be, I think in essence, we're going to see a bifurcation. At least this is my guess when it comes to like the traditional 4-year school. So I think on the one end, I think this will actually be a boon for public universities. I think a lot of people, especially if they're online, they're going to say, okay, why would I pay $45,000 for a Zoom course when I could pay, 10 to 15K for a Zoom course? Like, they're both going to be marginal experiences anyways. Like, I might as well, go with the state school. So I actually think this will be in some ways a good thing for state colleges, public schools, to take some of the excess demand that would have been taken up by some of those middle tier programs. And then on the other hand, I think, a lot of these schools, some people have even been referring to them almost as like luxury brands, in the sense that they are able to convince people to pay at such a high margin to get that little brand, right? Like on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, they can charge so much. And I think the demand for that will remain high. And they have the endowments to actually weather something like this. I think the fundamental question for me in that bracket of like the high end schools is like, do they try to get ahead and completely disrupt themselves? And their businesses at the end of the day, right? So if they wanted to have the same net revenue or profits, even, like, one option would be you essentially open these programs up more, right? Like, basically say, hey, look, if you want to get the best education in the world, you essentially pay a couple grand and you have open access. You up the enrollment and the marginal revenue you get from each person goes down, but the total revenue is much larger. To do that, though, would mean sacrificing a little bit of that luxury brand recognition, right? Which is that, hey, look, if everyone's got a Harvard on their resume or their LinkedIn, it's not as strong as a Signal per se. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do. I think a lot of them are still feeling it out a little bit, but that's kind of my long-winded response on what I think is going to happen. And again, it's still early. I know a lot of schools are trying to be optimistic. They're trying to, give this pitch of like, hey, like, we're just going to open a little bit early. Like, the students will social distance, but like, we've all been on college campuses. I couldn't think of a better breeding ground for a virus like COVID to spread. And so, I am not too optimistic that a lot of these schools will open and stay open. and there could be some pretty serious impact as a result.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. I want to close out with the segment that few of our, I guess, subscribers and readers know. They know that Ryan likes to come on the show and pitch business ideas. Usually I break them down. We're going to change the format a little bit today. What we're going to do is I'm going to pitch concepts and you're going to build out on them. So are you ready, Alex, or do you need some time? You need to get
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right, you ready? Couch, are you ready?
Always am.
All right, here we go. Got a couple curveballs. Alex, Cowdrey is a college student. He's in college right now. He is confused. What should he do?
What is he confused about?
Just in general, he's seen all his friends that were seniors. They just walked across a virtual stage, and he feels somewhat swindled out of a year of school because he paid $40,000 and he was there for 3/4. He missed asking his favorite girl out to the what do you call it? What was the stupid? Not the prom. What were the stupid things? Socials. What were the stupid Greek things?
Oh yeah. Socials and stuff.
yeah. He couldn't do the spring social with the female he was into at the time. He didn't get a chance to make that connection with the little homie.
You're tearing me apart, man. You're rubbing it in.
I mean, in college we were all there, man. We were all there.
Yeah. No, I totally. Okay. I understand where the confusion is coming from. And it's probably not just confusion, but also, to your point, a little bit of anger and frustration. And so, I think
there might be an upcoming recession, right? Like he's in school, going to graduate in a recession. And he's like, really?
Yeah.
Like,
no, I completely agree. So, look, I guess the first thing to say, and it might sound cheesy and, not be like the best thing to hear for, like, as a new grad, but the first thing to realize is like, these things don't last forever, right? Scott Galloway is always referencing this quote, which is that, the bad thing about crises is that they always happen. The good news is they end. The first thing to recognize is that, while there may be a recession as you leave school, recognize that your career is much longer than just the first year or two that you get out, right? Like you are going to have decades to build a career, and you're going to have, many opportunities to pull ahead, right? Now, that being said, you have to then take a step back and say, okay, well, what do I have the opportunity to focus on now, right? If there's obviously areas that are hurting, what can you focus on? And this is where I actually think there are some very unique opportunities. Like, when else do you have the opportunity to invest in yourself in things like your online presence or that side project and not feel FOMO? And like, I say this as someone who, we talk about how hard it is to write a book. I feel like part of the reason I was able to accomplish it over this time period is because, frankly, I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything, right? Like, normally I'd be like, oh, I'm out, I'm missing my friends out at the bars, or I'm not going to, these social events. I'm not going to the sporting events. But in a way, the world's kind of on pause right now. And what you can do is you can actually use that time and you can use that headspace to invest in yourself and invest in your projects, so that when, it is the time to actually turn on the jets, right, and invest in your career and move forward, you'll put in that work at a time when you had nothing else to do. So I'm sorry you're missing your spring socials. And, obviously a Zoom graduation isn't the same as walking across the stage. But recognize you have a lot of opportunities in front of you. So take advantage of what you can right now.
All right.
I feel way better now.
Yeah, he did hit you. He was like, yo, the bad news is the crises happen. The good news is the crises will not stay
always
here
on
forever.
They always
end.
end.
See, like that was a player slogan right there. All right. Now, here's the hard curveball. You wrote the book Modern College. We're going to send a lot of people to that book. But before we do that, let's say I'm an educator at higher ed. I'm at a mid-tier university. We're not trash. We just specialize maybe in engineering. Maybe we specialize in arts. Maybe we specialize in sustainability. We've got the best sustainability program the world's ever seen. That's what we've got. how do we compete? What is the innovative idea that you see other universities taking that everyone's not hip to just yet?
Definitely. Yeah. And that's actually a good point. Like, I wanted to clarify, right? Like, I'm not by any means ragging on, like so-called middle tier universities. Like, we all went to, Wisconsin Madison, which may not have the ranking of, say, an Ivy League school, but I think we can all agree that it positioned us to do whatever we want in life, right? And I think there's a lot of, schools in that space too, where, the options are limitless and the resources on those campuses are impressive. If I am, though, we'll start with the faculty, right? If I'm one of the faculty members on, at one of these schools, the first thing I'm thinking about is, okay, let's assume the worst case scenario. Let's assume that the system's about to be disrupted. You clearly have a skill set, right? And the question is, how do I actually leverage that skill set, right? And you can take an entrepreneurial, mindset to this approach and say, hey, what happens if I take these lectures I've been doing for the past couple of years and I put them on Teachable? Would people pay for it, right? Like, people pay for it now. What happens if you charge, a tenth of the price? Would you get more people to download it? Yes or no? Maybe worth trying. So that's where I would be thinking a little bit. Obviously change is uncomfortable. So, that's like the first step, is recognizing that there might be some change, but you could do that. In terms of the universities themselves, I think they have to take a step back and really think long and hard about what is their true purpose, right? And it's okay for your purpose to be like a great experience. It's okay to say it's this program or this program, but you really have to be crystal clear on what your value prop is and then ruthlessly prioritize, in my opinion. A lot of schools have a lot of excess spending. And if they're going to truly survive and weather this storm, you have to be really clear about why are people coming and paying to go to your school, and get rid of everything else. Everything else at this point is just a distraction. And this is very similar to what companies do, right? When tough times come, you just have to look at what are your key strengths and double down on those. And the ones that refuse to do that, unfortunately, usually, don't have the best endings.
Got it. Alex, it's been incredible. Thanks for the article on Trends Exchange. We're going to drive a lot of traffic to that and send our people that way. And lastly, I'm going to call out Modern College. It is now available on Amazon. And for the people that don't know, and just one sentence, Alex, tell them why they should read Modern College.
So if I had to sum it up very simply, I wrote the book that I wish someone had handed it to me the day I stepped on campus at UW-Madison. So I'll leave it at that. It is, everything that you need to know to succeed in college and land your dream job after.
Wonderful, wonderful.